Well, this may be the biggest news this summer because reports are indicating that a U.S. Court of Appeal has decided that President Trump's tariffs or certain tariffs are unconstitutional and they are going to reverse it. This is what we are hearing. But what are Trump's options if these tariffs are ruled unlawful? That's the big question a lot of people are wanting to know. And President Trump, he says that we are in trouble if this does go through. I'm going to break down everything that's going on as of today. But again, this is something that just went down on Friday. President Trump is on it. The Trump administration is fighting back. We will see what happens. So, it's either we see tariffs go away or they continue. And if they continue, according to reports, we could actually see higher tariffs in the very near future. But look at this. It says, Trump tariffs live updates. Besant sees Supreme Court upholding tariffs as Trump blasts India. Okay, this is big, okay? What is happening right now? And I want to read this to you. Look at this right here. It says U.S. Treasury Scott Bessent said Monday he is confident that the Supreme Court will back President Trump's use of a 1977 emergency law to impose broad tariffs, but noted the administration has a backup plan if it doesn't. Bessent told Reuters he is preparing a legal brief for the Solicitor General that stresses the need to tackle long-standing trade imbalances and curb fentanyl entering the U.S. Keep in mind, President Trump, he imposed this 1977 law, but he did so because he said that this trade imbalance is a national emergency. Let me read this to you. It says President Trump warned on Monday that a record $15 trillion in planned investment in the U.S. would be immediately canceled if courts are permitted to strike down his tariff policies. It says in a fiery post on Truth Social platform, he claimed that the loss of these tariffs would devastate the American economy, stating we would become a third world nation with no hope of greatness again. You can see right here. More than $15 trillion will be invested in the USA, a record. Much of this investment is because of tariffs. If a radical left court is allowed to terminate these tariffs, almost all of this investment and much more will be immediately canceled. In many ways, we would become a third world nation with no hope of greatness again. Time is of the essence. President DJT. So, here's what's interesting though, okay? Because not all the tariffs are voided as a result of what the court has decided. Look at this right here, okay? I'm going to read this to you. It says the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Federal Circuit held Friday that Trump overstepped his presidential authority when it imposed levies on virtually every country in the world as part of his April 2nd Liberation Day announcement. It says before court action, Trump's tariffs were set to affect roughly 69% of U.S. goods imports, according to the Tax Foundation. If struck down, the duties would impact just roughly 16%. The ruling injects a heavy dose of uncertainty into a central tenet of Trump's economic agenda, which has rattled the global economy since April. It says, for now, the appeals court ruling states the duties on goods for most countries, as high as 50% for a few countries, will stay into effect until October 14th to allow the Trump administration time to appeal the decision to the U.S. Supreme Court. Okay. Now, which tariffs were impacted? It says the appeals court decision affects the reciprocal tariffs Trump announced on April 2nd, as well as levies he had previously imposed on Mexico, Canada, and China. It says Trump cited the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act to justify his sweeping tariffs. He declared the United States trade deficit with other nations a national emergency to invoke the IEEPA. Okay, that is what it says right here. The appeals court ruled, however, the IEEPA does not give him authority to implement the tariffs, stating that powers reside solely with Congress. Okay. But here's where the tariffs are still in effect, even after October 14th, which Trump levies are spared. It says part of Trump's agenda remains safe from the court decision. Most notably, his sector-specific levies on steel and aluminum remain unaffected by the appeals court's ruling. Earlier this month, the Trump administration expanded its 50% steel and aluminum tariffs to include more than 400 additional product categories, according to the Department of Commerce. Trump has relied on these sector-specific tariffs, often referred to as Section 232 tariffs, to bypass court proceedings. Okay. It says right here, according to Lowe, they aren't the target of the pending litigation, and they're more likely to survive a legal challenge and continue into the next presidential administration, which is what we saw with the aluminum and steel tariffs originally imposed under the first Trump administration. Okay, so you see right there that, yeah, some of the tariffs are going to continue, some won't. Well, it's the ones that won't that are currently in question. That's what everyone's looking at. Okay, just having a blanket, whatever percentage to every single country, that's something that this appeals court says that no, that's not something that we can legally do. But according to the Trump administration, this is a national emergency. That's the only reason why he put these tariffs into place, or these reciprocal tariffs into place. Now, where do we go from here? Well, here's the thing, and I really want to address this comment that President Trump left. Okay, it says more than $15 trillion will be invested in the U.S., a record. Much of this investment is because of tariffs. If the United States doesn't bring in additional tariff revenue, a lot of this additional investment that we could have put back into the United States, the money won't be there. That's one. The second one, tariffs. By imposing tariffs on, let's say, a car company out of Mexico, what could happen, again, if it's pretty close as far as the cost of labor in Mexico versus the cost of labor here in the United States. And I understand labor is so much cheaper in Mexico, but if you impose all these tariffs and all these additional costs that are incurred by producing a product in Mexico and then shipping it to the United States, if the investment is greater in Mexico, okay, where now it costs more money because of tariffs, those companies are eventually going to move to the United States. That's what President Trump is saying, that we are going to see investment into the U.S., about $15 trillion. Okay, Apple has already announced this. We've seen what NVIDIA did, Facebook or Meta, Microsoft. A lot of companies have announced additional investments into the U.S. But again, if tariffs go away, most likely some of those companies that initially said, yes, we would invest into the U.S., they'll just invest more money into China or into Mexico. So that's the concern right now. The one thing I do want to leave you with is this, though. This is going to be an ongoing situation. We're not going to have answers to it immediately. It's not something that we're going to know about in the next week. This is something that is going to linger potentially for the next month and a half. If it does, we are likely going to see a lot of question marks in the stock market, which is concerning. We are likely going to see certain stocks sell off. Some companies are really going to be in limbo as far as layoffs and as far as hiring. So as we get more information as to what is going on here and how we are going to be impacted in the near future, I promise I'll bring you all the latest news and updates as soon as we get them. But as of today, that is what we know. So again, thank you guys for watching. Consider subscribing, and I'll see you guys on the next one.